If my sister dies, I will die with her." Those words did not come from a mouth. They came from the blazing stare of a Doberman puppy, barely 3 or 4 months old. That look, on a morning thick with smoke and trash, cut straight into the heart of anyone brave enough to stop and look. The scene was a dump on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, the ground a slick mess of rainwater, the air thick with the smell of burning plastic, motor oil, and rotting food. Amid that chaos, 2 small bodies huddled in a corner. A young female dog lay cradled by a swollen belly like a cantaloupe, motionless, breathing in ragged threads. Beside her, a gaunt puppy sat close, eyes rimmed red, body trembling but unbowed. It did not howl or bark. It simply braced its small frame like a living shield. Dear listener, where are you hearing this from? Tell us the city where this small story reached your heart, whether you are in Pittsburgh or some distant corner of the map. At the edge of the dump, a figure appeared. Margaret Hill, 60, a widow and former nurse, clutched a cloth bag while picking through recyclables. Her eyes were blurred by smoke. She was used to filth. Nothing prepared her feet to freeze in place at the sight before her. The puppy growled softly. The sound was thin as a stretched wire, but it carried fire, carried a vow. "Don't touch my sister." It pricked its ears, stepped back a hair, pressed itself against the swollen body. Its front paw was streaked with blood, the nails worn down to the quick. Still, it would not step away. In that moment, omniscience looked straight into its mind. It could not remember how many days had passed since it had been tossed here. It only remembered the hard yank of a collar, the cold laughter, the car door slamming. Time stopped meaning after that. There remained only one task: to stand guard. Margaret stifled a breath and bent low, whispering, "It's okay, little one. I won't hurt her." She extended a thin hand, carrying nothing but the scent of old antiseptic ingrained in her skin. The puppy stared, eyes probing as if through her heart, testing each beat. It did not lunge, did not attack, and neither would it move. Its whole body trembled like a drawn bow waiting for the final release. The female's breath hitched. A small groan escaped from a dry throat, like a thread about to snap. The puppy lunged, licking its sister's muzzle in a quick, frantic motion, then turned and growled again at the woman. Those eyes screamed without a sound. "If you hurt my sister, I will fight to the end." Margaret's chest tightened. Years in emergency rooms had shown her many partings, many lives abandoned. But she had never seen a creature so small stand with such a defiant posture. It was like an orphaned child insisting on the right to be loved through stubborn, desperate will. The metallic tang of blood spread into the mud, mixing with the sour smell of leaked oil. A red smear ran from the puppy's feet to the sister's body. The evidence was clear. It had dragged her out from beneath a pile of rusted scrap so the dump trucks wouldn't crush her. The wound on its paw was the price it had paid. An alarm bell rang in Margaret's mind. Act now, or both will die. But how to reach them when the puppy remained a living barricade? Sweat beaded on her brow and ran down the grooves of age. She drew from her bag an old knitted scarf, the very one she had once wrapped around her child. She showed it and slowly lowered herself so the puppy could see each movement. Time shrank to a pinpoint. Each beat of her heart sounded like the tick of life and death. The puppy glanced at the scarf, then at its sister. It growled once more, but this time the sound was less threatening than warning. "If you betray this trust, I will die with her." Margaret stepped closer. At that instant, the puppy bowed its head and pressed itself against the swollen belly, its eyes never leaving her. As if by an unspoken ritual, "I allow you to touch, but remember, my sister is everything." Her trembling hand finally reached the heavy body. Heat and the rank stench from the hardened tumor hit her like a blow. She did not flinch. She lifted the sister, whose body went limp as ragged cloth. The puppy sprang up and ran after her, leaving a streak of red in the dirt, refusing to let her go alone. In the pale morning light of Pittsburgh, that thin shadow clung close, as if the world might collapse at any moment. But so long as a single breath remained, it would not leave its sister. The rumble of a garbage truck echoed from afar, hoarse, cold, like a death knell. Margaret tightened her arms around the bloated-bellied female, her body limp, breath fractured. Just behind, the Doberman pup hobbled forward, leaving thick crimson streaks across the soaked ground. She flung open the door of her battered sedan, laid the sister on the back seat. Before she could turn, the pup had leapt in after, pressing itself against its sister's swollen frame, eyes blazing red. The engine roared to life, rattling hard as though mirroring Margaret's panicked heartbeat. She hit the gas. Tires slid across puddles of trash water before she burst onto the main road. Wind lashed the windows, carrying with it the lingering stench of burned plastic. Inside, the air thickened with the female's broken wheezing and the pup's unrelenting growl. Its eyes stayed locked on its sister. At times, they lifted to Margaret, issuing a silent ultimatum. If you stop, if you abandon her, I will never forgive you. Omniscience pierced its chest. Memories flared like fire. The slam of a car door, the jerk of a collar ripped away, the cold hand that hurled both into the dump. Betrayal was its inheritance. Yet here, in the narrow cage of this car, it wagered everything one last time. Margaret glanced in the rearview mirror. Blood from the pup's paw had seeped into the upholstery, spreading in dark stains. It didn't care. It wedged its fragile frame tighter against the belly, shivering yet resolute, eyes fixed on the shallow rise and fall of her chest. Red light. She slammed a palm against the wheel. The clock read just past 9, Pittsburgh traffic swelling thick. Horns blared behind. In the mirror, she saw the pup crane its neck, growling low, urging, "Go on, don't wait." Her pulse thundered, sweat streaking her temples. She floored the pedal, swerving into another lane, deaf to the storm of horns. A question gnawed. Will I make it in time? Each breath of the female was another toll on the countdown clock. A sharp curve. Tires screeched. The pup slid off balance, but instantly scrambled back, pressing its head to the swollen belly again. Trembling, wide-eyed, not with fear but with obsession. If I let go, she will vanish. Margaret's grip whitened on the wheel. Memories surged back, years of ER shifts, the labored whine of heart monitors, families crying outside. She had watched lives slip away for want of a single minute. Now another life demanded she outpace the clock. A rattling gasp tore through the car. The female convulsed faintly, blood frothing at her lips. The pup let out a strangled howl, pressing its mouth to hers, licking the bright fluid away. Margaret nearly broke into tears, even as her foot crushed the accelerator. The clinic was only blocks away, but traffic locked the road, cars crawling like an endless line of ants. Margaret leaned on the horn, her eyes wide with panic. In the back, the pup rose, claws scraping glass, growl low and burning, eyes aflame. It knew delay meant death. In that moment, omniscience caught its vow. If she stops breathing, I will go with her. Margaret jerked the wheel, swerving hard into the emergency lane. Tires shrieked, the smell of scorched rubber filling the air. Voices cursed, but she no longer cared. The car shot forward, leaving a trail of rage behind. Then the green sign appeared. Ramirez Veterinary Clinic. Her throat clenched. From the back came the pup's thunderous growl, a cry like a soldier glimpsing light at the end of the tunnel. She braked hard, flung the door open, and lifted the limp body. But the pup had already leapt ahead, scrambling across the concrete with bleeding paws. It reached the clinic door first, turned back, eyes rimmed red, issuing its command without words. "Hurry, old woman, we have no time left." The glass door of the clinic burst open, the bell jingling like the start of a new race. Inside, the air was stark and cold, heavy with antiseptic, tangled with the smells of blood and trash clinging to the two dogs' bodies. Dr. Lucas Ramirez, a middle-aged man with the hollow eyes of endless night shifts, froze for an instant at the sight before him. A female dog with a swollen, red and taut like a balloon about to burst, and beside her, a Doberman pup, bones jutting, paws bleeding, eyes burning fierce. "She's about to stop breathing. Now!" Margaret's voice cracked, hoarse with strain. At once, two nurses rushed in, lifting the female onto a steel gurney. The wheels clattered across tile. But before they could push, a low growl ripped through the air. The pup lunged forward, claws scraping the floor, its small frame barring the way, eyes blazing like twin flames in warning. The room seemed to hold its breath. No barking frenzy, no savage bite, just a quiet growl that chilled to the bone. In its trembling was despair, in its sound a vow. Don't touch her, unless you're saving her. Omniscience guided the gaze inside its mind. The memory of a hand yanking off its collar, the cold laugh of the one who abandoned them, still burned as if it had happened minutes ago. It trusted no one, but as Faith's eyes dimmed, it was forced to gamble one last time. Margaret knelt beside it, her hand trembling as she touched its back. "Trust me. They're not here to harm her. They're here to save her." The pup turned, eyes locking on hers. For one moment, two souls met. One who had lost everything, one drowning in despair. Slowly, its head lowered. Still shaking, it stepped back half a pace, enough for the gurney to roll forward. The operating room blazed with light. Halogen lamps bore down on the swollen belly, skin stretched, flushed red. Metal clinked as instruments hit trays, the air filled with rapid, ragged breaths. Outside the glass, the pup pressed its face against the pane, fogging the cold surface with panting breath. It did not blink, eyes tracking every stroke of the scalpel. Each incision made its body twitch, as though it were the one being cut. Faith lay unmoving, pulse fragile as a thread. The monitor flickered weakly. A nurse wiped sweat from the doctor's brow. The room was a battlefield. Death on one side, fragile hope on the other. In the corridor, Margaret sank into a plastic chair, hands clenched white. In her ears rang echoes of years past, monitors beeping, the frantic cry of Code Blue in ER halls. But tonight she was no nurse. She was only a powerless witness. The pup did not howl or bark. It trembled, eyes red, claws digging into tile. Minutes stretched into centuries. Omniscience let us see. In its mind, every second was a voiceless prayer. Give her another chance. Then, the long, flat beep. The line on the screen went still. The room froze. Instruments hung mid-air. Margaret's chest collapsed. The pup let out a strangled howl, pressing harder against the glass, claws scratching frantic pleas. "No! She's not done!" Dr. Ramirez roared, both hands pounding the dog's chest. A nurse injected the crash drug. 1 second. 2. Then the monitor flickered, slow but steady. The line rippled once more. A collective breath broke out in the room. Outside, the pup collapsed to the floor, eyes fixed, but in them glimmered a thread of hope. Dr. Ramirez leaned over Faith, gasping. "We just pulled her back from death's hands, but it's not over. We'll need hours to be sure. In the corridor, Margaret's hands locked together, tears pouring unchecked. She looked up and saw the pup sprawled before the glass door, unblinking, ears rigid. In the pale light, that small body looked like a sentinel at the gates of hell, vowing death would not pass through again. The recovery room was cold and white as ice, fluorescent light pouring down on the still body of the female dog. Around her belly, white bandages wrapped tightly over the incision. Her breath was faint, fragile, like wind slipping through a crack in the door. Each inhale, each exhale, was a battle with death. Just outside the glass enclosure, the Doberman pup lay flat against the tile. Its reddened eyes had not left its sister once. Since the moment the operating room door had closed, it had not slept. Its front claws scraped lightly at the floor, as if trying to cling to her life. Dr. Ramirez stepped out, pulling off his gloves, voice heavy and low. "The surgery went well, but we don't know if she'll make it. We need to wait a few days." Margaret nodded, her hands clasped tight and trembling. She looked down at the pup. It neither barked nor whimpered. It only panted, gaze fixed on the glass pane. In that silence, one could still hear the voiceless cry. "Don't leave me." The first day, it refused all food. A bowl of rice mixed with meat was placed in front of it. It sniffed once, then turned away, returning to the glass. When night fell, the neon lights cast a sharper glow into its eyes, unblinking, never leaving. On the second day, a nurse brought warm milk. Still, it would not drink. Its gaunt frame shivered, but it refused to swallow. In that tender mind, food or water no longer mattered. It had chosen to tie its own life to each breath of its sister. If she went, it would follow. On the third day, Margaret knelt beside it, whispering, "Little one, if you don't eat, you'll collapse. She needs you." But its eyes only stayed on Faith. That look said more than words. "She hasn't woken. I can't either." The third night, the wind whistled through the hospital window frame. The recovery ward was silent, except for the slow, steady beeping of the monitor. Margaret dozed against a chair, sunk in memory. She remembered her years as a nurse, all the times she had watched patients exhale their last breath alone, with no family beside them. Now, when she looked at the pup pressed to the glass, she saw it all again. Only this time, a small soul would not allow it to happen. Omniscience led us deeper. In the pup's mind, memories of long nights at the dump came rushing back. It remembered how its sister had shared a crust of bread, remembered her warmth pressed against it in the storm. She had once been protected. Now, it was repaying. On the morning of the fourth day, a small miracle stirred. Faith twitched. Her eyelids trembled, then slowly opened, revealing clouded eyes, but still lit with life. The room held its breath. The monitor climbed into a steadier rhythm, and at that moment, the pup barked for the first time. The sound was hoarse, weak, trembling, yet it broke through the wall of silence that had bound them for days. It sprang up, pressing its paws to the glass, eyes blazing. Faith turned her head weakly, dry lips parting, as if searching. In answer, the pup let out a short, rasping cry, and then bent down to eat its first bite of food in days. The whole room broke into tears. Margaret collapsed into her chair, tears spilling freely, voice breaking. "You kept your sister alive. You deserve a name." She wiped her face quickly, staring into those stubborn, shining eyes. A name came out, as though it had been waiting in her heart all along. "From now on, you'll be Hope." Then she turned to the female dog, eyes barely open, breath fragile but steady. "And you'll be Faith." In that instant, the room fell silent. No one spoke another word. Those two names lit the sterile space like lanterns, and every heart swelled until it broke. Faith was moved from the recovery ward into intensive care. Her belly was still swathed in thick white bandages, but her eyes carried more light. Her legs trembled, frail as broken branches, yet she had crossed the line between life and death. Beside her, Hope never left. He lay against the glass enclosure, ears pricked, eyes following every rise and fall of her chest. When Faith stirred, Hope barked softly, hoarse, urgent, as if to announce to the world, "My sister is still here." Only when she slept soundly did he lower his head, though his eyes stayed open, standing guard against unseen dangers. Margaret sat in a plastic chair, her thin hands folded at her chest. She could not look away. Inside her bloomed a feeling she thought she had lost forever: renewal. Since her husband's death, her house had been nothing but walls of silence, a cold fireplace, and empty rooms. Now, a frail, skeletal puppy had returned to her something grief and time could not erase: the belief that love can keep life from slipping away. When Faith was cleared to go home and recover, Margaret brought them both back to her old house on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. The small place, with faded shingles and a pine-scented porch, welcomed them. Evelyn, her daughter, 35, a teacher, rushed over as soon as she heard the news. The moment she stepped inside, she froze at the sight of Hope. The pup sat at the threshold, wary eyes fixed on her. Not aggressive, only watchful. He raised his head and held her gaze. Then, suddenly, he stepped forward and pressed his thin skull against her thigh. Evelyn broke down, clutching him, tears soaking his ragged fur. "Mom, I've never seen a creature so strong." Hope didn't answer, but his eyes softened. For the first time, he allowed himself to lean on someone other than his sister. In the days that followed, the once silent house filled with sound. Faith rested on a thick blanket by the hearth, her breathing still heavy but steady. Hope stayed pressed to her side, never straying. When Margaret brought medicine, Hope studied her every move. If anyone else came near, his ears rose, his eyes burned. But when Faith flicked her tongue to her lips, he eased, pressing his nose into her neck, whispering without words, "Rest. I'm here." More than once, Margaret stood in the corner, watching in silence. In the glow of the fire, Hope sat guard beside Faith. His small shadow stretched long across the wooden floor. The sight tightened her chest. She remembered nights in emergency wards, machines forcing breath into bodies, families weeping in sterile halls. But here, love did not collapse into sobs. It took the shape of a silent watch. One afternoon, the last light of day spilled golden through the window, painting the room in warmth. Faith lay under her blanket, eyes weak but peaceful. Hope sat close, head high, eyes bright. Evelyn sat opposite, sketchbook in hand, quietly drawing the scene. "Mom," she whispered, "I've never seen anything so beautiful." Margaret nodded, her eyes shimmering. "Beautiful and costly. They've survived because of love. A love our kind has sometimes forgotten." At that moment, the fire leapt in the hearth, light dancing across the wooden walls. Hope tilted his head, eyes like stars in the night. He did not understand the words, but he understood their truth. He and Faith were no longer alone. Real love needs no vows, no pounding chests or promises. Love is staying, keeping watch, refusing to walk away, even when the belly is swollen, the breath shallow, the heart weary. In that house, a widow once locked in solitude, a daughter who had hidden her feelings in notebooks, and two small souls pulled back from the edge of death, all found the same thing: the faith that miracles still exist when we dare to sit with another's pain. The Pittsburgh morning was crisp and cold. Mist curled along Margaret's wooden porch, tracing fragile lines like the breath of faith still resting inside. The fireplace glowed, its flames casting light on the white bandages wrapped around Faith's belly. Her breathing was steadier now, her eyes brightening each time they found Hope beside her. But within the small house, another change was quietly stirring. It began with a timid knock that afternoon. Caleb, a 13-year-old boy from a street over, stood awkwardly on the porch. In his hands, he held a container of leftovers his mother had sent. Margaret smiled and welcomed him in. Caleb nodded, but his gaze locked almost instantly on Hope. The Doberman pup stiffened, ears high, body taut. His eyes fixed, not growling, not barking, only watching in silence. Caleb stepped back, heart pounding. I won't hurt anyone," he stammered. Margaret placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, whispering, "Don't be afraid. He's only protecting his sister. He's still learning how to trust." Hope stood there, eyes flashing. Omniscience peered within. In his mind, the memory of the hands that had hurled him into the dump remained sharp. Humans were in danger. Yet from within the clinic glass, Faith's faint blinking had once ordered him, "Try one more time." Hope lowered his head. Caleb swallowed hard, then knelt, extending his thin hand forward. The pup sniffed briefly, then turned away. Not aggressive, not accepting, just waiting. In the days that followed, Caleb kept coming. He didn't rush to touch or pet. He simply sat on the floor, sketchbook beside him, pencil moving in quiet strokes. He drew Faith sleeping, Hope standing guard. At first, Hope only glanced, but soon his eyes lingered longer on the boy's moving hand. One evening, with sunset spilling across the window, Caleb slid a sheet of paper toward Hope. On it was a drawing of him, thin, bright-eyed, sitting beside a sister lying still. Hope tilted his head, staring for a long moment. Then, without warning, he stepped forward and placed a wounded paw on the edge of the paper. Caleb froze, heartbeat thundering. Behind them, Margaret raised a hand to her mouth, tears shining. In that instant, the first wall of Hope's suspicion cracked. Faith's recovery was slow, but enough for her to stand a few minutes each day. Hope shadowed her, steadying each faltering step. When Faith stumbled, he let out a sharp whine, throwing his thin body beneath her weight to hold her up. Caleb watched, wide-eyed, whispering to Margaret, "I've never seen an animal guard like a real soldier." Margaret nodded, her eyes wet. "He carries more than his age should allow. But you see, when Faith fights to walk, Hope learns to open." One rainy night, Caleb brought food. Faith slept soundly, her breaths gentle. Hope still kept watch. Caleb set the box down, silent. Then Hope approached, sniffed and looked straight into the boy's eyes. No growl, no turning away, only a gaze. Slowly, Caleb opened the container, tore a piece of chicken, and held it in his trembling palm. Hope hesitated. 1 second. 2. Then he lowered his head, took the meat, and ate. The room went silent. Margaret stood frozen in the kitchen, tears falling into her porcelain cup. Caleb sat still, his heart exploding in his chest. He whispered, "Thank you. Hope." Hope lifted his head, and for the first time, his eyes were no longer rigid with suspicion, only softened, fragile, but real. Winter in Pittsburgh ended with a still morning. Pale sunlight slipped through the window, falling across the rug where Faith lay. She could walk a few steps now, her belly less swollen, her eyes no longer clouded. Beside her, Hope sat alert, ears raised, watching every faint movement of his sister. But no one in the house forgot that Faith remained fragile. Death had not yet let go, and one afternoon, with golden light spilling through the frame of the window, Faith suddenly collapsed. Margaret and Evelyn rushed forward, voices frantic. A respirator was hastily reconnected. Yet even then, Hope flung himself against her side, the thin body pressed close, just as it had been the first time Margaret found them in the dump. He trembled, but he would not move. Faith's breathing grew shallow, her eyes half open, and in that fading gaze, omniscience made clear. She had chosen to let go, but to let go in peace, knowing her little brother had found a true family. Hope let out a strangled howl. The room sank into silence. And then, Faith breathed no more. Margaret wept openly, clutching Hope. Evelyn covered her face. Caleb stood frozen, tears sliding down the unfinished page of his sketchbook. But Hope did not thrash or claw. He lay still, his head resting on his sister's chest, sighing as if in farewell. The room was filled with quiet sobbing. And then, a small miracle. After Faith was gone, Hope rose. His eyes brimmed with tears, yet his gaze shone brighter than ever. He walked to Caleb and lay his head in the boy's lap, entrusting him with everything that remained. Margaret clasped her hands, tears streaming. Faith left a part of herself inside Hope. And from this day on, we must live for both of them. Omniscience whispered to the listener, life always teaches us the lesson of letting go. Faith departed, but she left behind the greatest gift, a hope resilient, loyal, and capable of love. In that small house, Hope was no longer the trembling pup abandoned to die. He had become a bridge, mending the hollow in a widow's heart, a boy's loneliness, and even the hearts of those who hear this story. And now, the narrator turns to you. From which city are you listening to this? Tell me, so I may know how far the story of faith and hope has reached. If you have ever known loss, you understand. Love is not holding on forever, but daring to release at the right moment, so that memory may carry the flame forward. If this story brought you to tears, share it. Perhaps you yourself will become hope for another soul. Subscribe, so together we can spread more miracles like this. Hope sat by the window, the setting sun turning his thin black coat to gold. On the wall beside him hung a framed photo of Faith. On the floor, Caleb lay down his sketchbook, the last page showing the two siblings side by side, one pair of eyes closed, the other looking forward. The story closes not only with loss, but with a truth that breaks us open. True love is not keeping for ourselves, but giving away, so that one day when we are gone, it will still shine in the hearts of those left behind. Perhaps you sit here now, eyes still wet, and I want to ask you something, quietly, but straight to your heart. Have you ever saved the life of a small creature? A dog? A cat? A trembling bird? And now? Are they still beside you? Or have they become memory, leaving behind only their warmth inside you? If you have, please share your story below, because perhaps your words will ignite faith in someone wandering in the dark tonight. Thank you for staying with me until the very end, for listening to the journey of faith and hope. You gave them not only your presence, but a heart that cared. And if you believe that love and compassion can save this world one life at a time, please subscribe, so that each time a new story is told, you will be the first to hear it. And together, we will keep writing miracles.